Showtime, as the great Swiss Beats would say. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you, and this is your hybrid AEW All Out WWE Wrestlepalooza post show. Now, this was a jam-packed day of professional wrestling. Whether you are a fan of AEW, a fan of WWE, or somebody who's kind of in between, you were eating throughout the day. They had a lot of things that went down storyline wise for both companies that are really going to progress within the next couple of weeks, especially when it comes to the women, right? We've seen title changes go down on both shows. Chris Statlander, she defeated Tekla, Tony Storm, and Jamie Hayter in the four-way for the AEW Women's Championship. And then tonight, we saw Stephanie McCure be crowned the new WWE Women's Championship. This is going to be kind of an interesting show because when you get opportunities like this today, where we get to see two of the companies have shows back to back, same way that it went down July 12th when we got All In and Saturday Night's Main Event, you really get to see the differences between the two companies and the different states that they're currently in. I think that in 2024, it was abundantly clear that WWE had the superior on-screen product to AEW. And I don't even really think it was particularly close. And I think now in 2025, I think that AEW, quality-wise, is having their best shows that they put together in 2025 since 2021. And I think WWE, quality-wise, is having their worst stretch of television since 2019. And I don't think it's particularly close, but something that you need to kind of ask yourself is, and this was the thought that was going through my mind, multiple times throughout the main event of Wrestlepalooza, and that is, does it really matter? Does it really matter that the on-screen product with WWE is pretty poor at the moment when they're getting truckloads of money from the Saudis to produce WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia? Does it really matter when DC is giving WWE truckloads of money to host John Cena's last match ever? Does it really matter when ESPN is giving WWE truckloads of money when to get the streaming rights to the PLEs, on their streaming services? Does it matter? Does it matter that WWE quality-wise really isn't that hot right now, when they're just getting so much money from so many different, companies and so many different, sources of income that they're now stumbling upon? That's a question that you need to ask yourself. It's a question that I was asking to myself multiple times throughout this day of wrestling. And guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel out more ways than you. What's up, kid? Lots of wrestling. Glad I only watched one, and I know which one that was. But we're going to go and start a little bit from Wrestlepalooza and then work our way back to All Out. We open up the show with Brock Lesnar versus John Cena. Now, it was abundantly clear to me why this was the opener of this show, and I'm pretty sure that it is abundantly clear to you guys why this opens the show. It's so Brock Lesnar can get the hell up out of there as soon as possible, right? And after what went down in that match and how it played out, it really had me wondering, was this really necessary? When everybody kind of mapped out what a John Cena retirement tour would look like in their minds, I'm pretty sure that they had a couple of lists of dream opponents that they wanted to see. And one of them, I'm pretty sure for most people, I know for me, was AJ Styles. Now, with us having a limited amount of dates left on this tour, I think it's become pretty clear that we're not going to get that match. And for us to get what we saw today, where John Cena basically just got his ass whipped, for 10 minutes, it really makes me think to myself, why are we getting this instead of a match with him and AJ? And for me, Brock Lesnar winning this match really doesn't make any sense unless that they're going to try to parlay this into building up Brock Lesnar to be this unstoppable force again, to where down the line they can have a young guy get a big-time win over Brock Lesnar in the hopes of repelling that guy. Somebody like a Braun Breaker. But with the amount of dates that we have left and with John Cena, seeing him get destroyed by Brock Lesnar, who's a 46, 48-year-old man, I don't really see how that benefits anybody. I don't see how anybody really wanted to see that. I think if you want to get the visuals of having kids cry in the crowd, that's a cool visual that they're going to sit there and probably, showcase for the next several weeks or next several video packages anytime that they're hyping up Brock Lesnar. But it was really unnecessary. I don't think anybody wanted to see that, and my faith in the way that they're paying out these storylines, it's very minimal at this time. Because if you guys just look at the last several months, was there really a big payoff for the John Cena heel turn? I think not. Was there really a big payoff for the return of R-Truth when he was coming back and having this serious tone? I think not. So for me to now imagine if we're going to get a big time payoff for this storyline of Brock Lesnar destroying John Cena and hopefully giving the rub to a young guy, somebody like Braun Breaker. My faith is at a very minimal level right now in the way that they've been paying these things off in the last several weeks. The CD Garden should have gotten John Cena's last match just out of principle. Not happy about Mania going to Saudi Arabia. I think that pretty much guarantees that we're not going to get any live coverage from me at WrestleMania 43. We will not. The channel will not be giving you live coverage from Saudi. That will not be happening. I will be at Monday Night Raw this Monday, so I may sit there and try to give you some footage from there as well, because I think that's cool. We usually don't get a lot of footage from the events, so hopefully I'll be able to give that to you guys by Tuesday. Of course, Stephanie will join Triple Big Nose and all that. Give me a break. I mean, does it really matter? I know that a lot of people they make the Hall of Fame a big deal, but I've always kind of looked at it like this. It's not like the NFL Hall of Fame or the Baseball Hall of Fame where it's like this, you're getting voted in by a coalition of people, or there's a minimum standard of you have to have just this amount of touchdowns or this amount of hits in your career to even be considered. I mean, it's a Hall of Fame that started off as something that was just in Vince McMahon's mind. There's no physical building. There's no place like Cooperstown or Canton, Ohio, where you can go in and visit the Hall of Fame. It's a made up thing that they do to make money. So I know that in principle, we want to sit there and anytime we mention the Hall of Fame, there's always going to be some type of uproar. But to me, it's a made up thing that they do to make money. And of course, Stephanie McMahon's going to get in. I know that there's going to be people the weeks leading up to the Hall of Fame induction that are going to be kind of opining for Vince McMahon to be the person who's going to induct her. I imagine it's going to be Triple H, but I'm sure that there's going to be people that are going to be out there that are going to be, clamoring for Vince McMahon to be the one to induct her, which I think would be a horrible idea. Shocked that they let Tony drop the belt. I was shocked by that as well. I think that and we're gonna get towards the end of the show. I'm gonna talk more about what I think was the better out of the two. But Tony losing the title wasn't something that I expected. It felt pretty abrupt, in my opinion, that Tony dropped the belt. But I think that Statlander is somebody who's built up enough fan equity with the fans that I think that they're going to be able to sit there and get behind Statlander now, especially with this storyline they're kind of building with her in Utah. I think that that's an interesting development that's going on with her. So hopefully she's able to do something with that. I wonder if Tony's going to make a movie or something. I'm thinking something like that as well. That might be the case, the way that she was able to drop the title so abruptly. My instinct is always like that. Please don't let Vinnie Man. Well, I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think it's impossible. I think that with them bringing Brock Lesnar back into the fold shows that they don't care about when it comes to controversy surrounding people. If they think that they can make money off of somebody, I think that they have made it abundantly clear that women's rights be damned. that that they will easily hold their nose, and if they think they can make a few bucks, they will ignore that stuff, which is disgusting in my opinion. But hey, I'm just going off of what I see, right? Now the Wrestlepalooza show, it's if you're looking at the card going into this show, I think there was really two matches that really had most people intrigued going into it, right? And it was the Cena match against Brock Lesnar, and it was the mixed tag match, neither of which main evented the show, which I think was a kind of a mistake. I know that WWE, the title was on the line in the main event for Cody Rhodes, but sometimes we've seen examples of this over the years. I think WrestleMania 18 being the best example is sometimes the title doesn't always necessarily need to end the show. More people were intrigued about the Brock and Cena match and AJ Lee's return than that. But hey, if that happens, I'll be done with WWE. We all say that, right? I feel like there's a lot of times that we at least, especially over the last year or two, right, with all the things that have been going down, I think that we all kind of say we'll be done with WWE, yet we still tune in every Monday or Friday or for the PLEs. Before I covered professional wrestling, there was things that I sat there and I said, hey, personally, that's not for me. Now that I cover professional wrestling on the internet, I feel like I have no choice, which is sad because we just got to look at the numbers, right? If I just solely covered AEW and solely covered all the indies or TNA and stuff like that, the interest wasn't be there. WWE is what drives the attention. So I have no choice, unfortunately. Whether I like the show or not, whether I like what they do politically or policy-wise or not, I am a slave to the Fed, unfortunately. But we get into the second match of the show. The Usos going up against Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, but we got a little bit of a twist. It was shown earlier in the night. There was a brawl between B&B and the Usos, and we saw Adam Pearce get in between them and says, I'm going to have to kind of make an adjustment to this match. I'm going to have to add a special guest referee to keep things in order. And he added none other than LA Knight. If you've been paying attention on Monday Night Raw, we've seen tempers flare between LA Knight and Jey Uso on multiple different occasions. That match was very crazy, especially with Jey Uso getting busted open, Nikki. I thought that was surprising because we usually don't see blood on a WWE show. But usually when we do see blood on the WWE show, it's because somebody actually got busted open, and that's what we saw, right? The Usos, who WWE has crowned as the greatest tag team of all time. I said it on my Monday Night Raw post show. Why does everything always have to be the biggest or the greatest? They can never just say something is pretty good, right? It's never something is good. It's always this is the greatest or biggest. The Usos, in my opinion, are not the greatest tag team of all time, but hey, I'm sure that there's a couple of 12-year-old kids who would disagree with me. But throughout this whole match, we see the tensions get built between LA Knight and Jey Uso. LA Knight pretty much sits there and turns his back on all these different times where they bring in the tables or they bring in the chairs. He lets everything go. It's basically a no DQ match with LA Knight as the referee. Now, the Usos, this was a night full of nostalgia. I know seeing them tag team again is something that I know a lot of people have been wanting to see for a while. Jey Uso has obviously made himself a big-time single star. Jimmy Uso has managed to build himself a nice little role. Nowhere near as big and popular as Jey, but he is somebody who's gained some type of fan support. And Jimmy was getting worked throughout this whole match for the most part. And we get to a point where Jey, he gets a chair that is thrown into the ring by Paul Heyman, who's trying to give it to Braun Breaker. And he finds his way to be able to snatch the chair. And he swings to hit Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker moves, and then he almost accidentally hits LA Knight in the corner. LA Knight earlier, he is arguing with Bronson Reed. Jey Uso, he dives over and he hits Bronson Reed. And you have LA Knight asking him, he's like, was that meant for me? Was that meant for me? Continuing the tension between the two guys. And eventually we get into the ring. And Jey Uso, who gets busted open the hard way, he gets hit with a tsunami by Bronson Reed. Division picks up the win, 1, 2, 3. I think that's good for these guys. We need to continue the momentum for them. Seth Rollins is obviously the main catalyst for that group, but you want to keep the two young guys strong as possible because that's the whole purpose of this group, at least in my mind, is this is kind of a different variation of Evolution where you had Triple H, who was the top guy at the current moment, and you had Randy Orton and Batista, who were the obvious guys who are next up. I think Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker fit those roles to the T, especially Bronson Reed. So the Usos take a L in their reunion match. LA Knight and Jey Uso, it looks as if they're going to continue to, let this feud between them, unfold. We saw on Monday where Jey Uso was on the phone. It looked as if it was hinted that he was speaking to Roman Reigns. If you don't know, Roman Reigns is off right now filming Street Fighter. Cody Rhodes just came back from filming his role in Street Fighter. If you've seen that cast, the names that are going to be playing all these different characters in that movie, it's probably the most random cast I've ever seen. You have guys like Jason Momoa, 50 Cent is in there, Andrew Schultz. It's Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Very random casting, but hey, who knows? It could be the greatest movie of the year next year. That man loved LA Knight as the ref. LA Knight is a guy who is very popular. Looking forward to seeing LA Knight on Monday. Next, we get into what I consider to be the match of the night for Wrestlepalooza. Stephanie McCure versus Io Sky. Io Sky, I've said it on multiple different occasions. I consider her to be the best in-ring wrestler in WWE at this very current moment. Stephanie McCure, if you guys don't know, I am a humongous fan of Stephanie McCure and Mercedes Moné. So Stephanie being in this position now where she is having such a big time success in WWE. She lit it up in NXT. Ever since she's made it on the main roster, she's been presented as a star for the most part. She was gone for a good stretch of time where she missed 4 or 5 weeks of Raw, which for me, I was like, oh man, this isn't good. It came out, it wasn't an injury. They must have just had nothing for her, which in my mind kind of made it to where I thought, okay, there's a good possibility that they didn't have her on TV for all this, time. That I'm thinking that they're going to have Io win because Stephanie has been gone for so long. I feel like it'd be kind of abrupt to have her come out and win the title after being missing on the show for so many different weeks. But they were able to go out there and put on a hell of a match. 20-plus minutes. These two women are dogs. Io, Stephanie. What I find so interesting about these two women is English is obviously not their first languages, yet they have been able to get over with the crowd and connect with people strictly through their wrestling. And that's a beautiful part of wrestling. I know in wrestling, there's a lot of debates all the time about, what's more important, the wrestling or the story. That's a debate that goes on back and forth so often when you discuss wrestling. But I think we've been proven that with these two women that there's multiple ways to skin a cat. There's not just one specific way to do wrestling. And I think that the fact that they've let wrestling do their talking is something that needs to be applauded more and recognized more. It should be shining examples of, hey, you don't always need to have 20-minute long promos or these long-ass video packages or the several weeks build between these individuals to put on and tell a good story, because they were able to do that throughout the spring. Stephanie McCure, she picked up the W, hitting, this kind of a variation of the spinal tap. It was an emotional moment for her. You could tell Stephanie has made it abundantly clear ever since she signed with WWE that this has always been her dream. She said in an interview that prior to signing with WWE, that AEW offered her more money. WWE basically told her, after she told them the amount of money that AEW offered them, that, hey, we're not going to be able to match that. Good luck. Yet she took less money to join the WWE. And you can see that all this hard work that she's put in, paid off. Her dad was there. She was able to gift the title to her dad. He held it up. Very proud moment for the two of them. Nice to see a father and a daughter have that moment with each other. It was a good moment. And shout outs to Stephanie, my favorite wrestler on the whole WWE roster right now. They're either going to make the Usos or Knight a heel. I think Jimmy, right? I think Jimmy. They're making it kind of clear that Jimmy's teetering along the lines of heel or not. Would rather watch Bakura over Charlotte. Charlotte's nah. Charlotte's right where she needs to be. I feel like the tag team that they have her with Alexa, I feel like it's probably the most interesting Charlotte has been for a while, because you'll kind of see a little bit of a human side of her. And Charlotte, for me, is what it is. I think it's not crazy for me to say she's a great in-ring wrestler, but she's not somebody who I need to watch wrestle ever again in my life. Guys, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. And it's always free. Remember that. Speaking of Charlotte, what do you guys think about Andrade leaving? That was pretty interesting, right? The way that it was framed earlier was it kind of felt as if, he left because he was unhappy. But then as, the hours and days started going by, it became more clear that WWE was the one who wanted to show him the door. And it kind of gave him a little bit of a smear campaign, right? There was a report coming out that WWE was frustrated with him because his English didn't get any better. But we just saw in the match that we're talking about, Io does big portions of her promos in Japanese. Stephanie does big portions of her promo in Spanish. So we've shown right there with these two ladies that it's not necessary for their English to be that great for them to get over. And for me, just personally, I think Andrade's English is perfectly fine. I understand what the guy is saying. And I think that the accent kind of fits well with the character. So for me, I think that was kind of just, BS coming out of it. It was just want to, kick the guy in the ass on the way out. But next we get into the match that people were really looking forward to the most. And that was AJ Lee and CM Punk against Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. AJ Lee, somebody who people have been opining for and begging for to return to the WWE for at least a decade, right? I feel like, especially when it became clear that we're going to now be getting the Women's Royal Rumble, I think every year, especially the first one, people start fantasy booking AJ Lee making her return there. And I think once CM Punk made his return to the WWE, I think it became more of a when, not if, AJ Lee was going to return. And it looks as if now was the moment where the zeros were enough on that check and the timing made the most sense that AJ Lee was going to come in. So people were kind of going to wonder, what is she going to look like, right, after all these years not being in the ring? And for the most part, you knew that the formula that was going to play out, at least in my mind, was we're going to get CM Punk be working the bulk of this match. We're going to get different points of this match where we're going to have AJ Lee being teased that she's going to get in, yet CM Punk wasn't going to fail in his attempt to tag her in. We got that. We got everything that kind of played out the way. And then eventually we're going to get AJ Lee tagged in, and she was going to come in like a ball of fire. And that's how it played out, right? My thing was AJ Lee came out. She looked perfectly fine. Outside of this one spot where her and CM Punk went to try to hit a sliced bread on Becky Lynch, it looked as if the timing was a little bit off during that maneuver. But for the most part, I think that she was put in a position to look as strongly as she possibly could, especially being in a ring with an opponent like Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch, if you paid attention, anytime that they have brought in some of these legends, Lita, Trish Stratus, multiple different others, where you're having these ladies who haven't worked at least, on a regular basis, come in and work with Becky. That obviously shows you how much the company has faith in her and her ability, and how much they think that she is somebody who is safe to work with almost anybody. And Becky really played her role and selling the fact that throughout this whole match, she was scared that AJ Lee was going to be tagged in, which is kind of funny if you think about it. AJ Lee is a smaller woman, if we're being honest. I think she's about like 5'3", 5'4" max. So for her to, sell it like, AJ is this giant, I think we need to give our props to Becky. I think that the way that Seth was able to sell, being in a Black Widow, that looked like he was in excruciating pain from AJ Lee. I think that was perfect. I think that they really were able to show AJ Lee in the brightest light possible to where she came out and she looked like a star coming out of this match. She was in there with the right opponents. Becky Lynch did her job. She was able to tap out to the Black Widow from AJ Lee, CM Punk, AJ Lee. They picked up the win. People were ecstatic coming out of this match. AJ Lee looked like $1 million. I'm excited to see where they are going to go with AJ Lee from here. Is she going to be involved in a feud with Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship? Are they going to have her, mix it up with the other names? There's so many different matches that we could think of that involve AJ Lee now, right? Her and Tiffany Stratton, her and Jade Cargill, her in a singles match with Becky Lynch. When Naomi comes back, a match with Naomi, who Naomi has been begging, and is just, you could tell with all the tweets that she has been tweeting out since AJ Lee's return that she is just pulling her hair out. The fact that AJ Lee came back when she is gone. Match with her and Charlotte. A match with her and Bianca Belair. So many different big-time money matches that we could have involving AJ Lee that I think this is going to be a successful run for her, because it has become clear that this is not just a little one-off. This is going to be a multi-year full-time contract with her and with WWE and AJ Lee. So we're in it for the long haul. They never used him really during his time in WWE. Yeah, Andrade, outside of that series with Carmelo Hayes where they were hooping on a weekly basis on SmackDown, I don't know what the heck happened, man. I think that he thought it makes sense as soon as Triple H took the book, and you saw it happen with guys like Aleister Black and Miro, that they thought, this is a guy who booked us the best that we've looked in our careers at NXT Black and Gold. So we're going to go back there. We're going to go back there in the bigger company. We're going to be booked by a guy who presented us like kings. So this is going to be something that is really going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy for us to get success in the biggest stage possible. And it really hasn't worked out that way. I think Miro has now, after his feud with Sheamus where he tapped him out, I think now he's gaining some momentum. Aleister Black on SmackDown, I think that he is not being booked properly. I used to say this. I would preface the statement with possibly and arguably before I would say this. But now I think there's been enough of a sample size to where I could drop possibly and drop arguably and just straight up say SmackDown is easily the worst weekly wrestling show of the week. And anybody who is a babyface on that show, you're DOA, unless your name is Cody Rhodes. That's probably why LA Knight had to get the hell up out of there, because he knew that his ass was DOA on that show, because they don't know what the hell they're doing over there. It was great seeing AJ. The fact that they won was a cherry on top. Yeah, I feel like there was like no doubt that they were going to win. I don't think that was ever up for debate. But after this match, we get an appearance from The Undertaker. And my first thought was, oh my God, they're going to have The Undertaker go out here and he's going to hawk something. He's going to try to sell me a drink. He's going to try to sell me a phone plan. He's going to try to sell me tickets to or travel plans for Saudi Arabia. He's going to try to sell me something. And he comes out and he goes by Stephanie McMahon. And he basically goes on to say, we've known each other for a long time. I don't know why Stephanie McMahon, as soon as she saw him, didn't run away, because this is a man who's abducted her in the past. But hey, that's just me. And he goes on and he says, he goes on and says the DX, catchphrase, "Are you ready?" I'm thinking that he's just there to hype up, maybe an appearance on her podcast, because they're both signed on the the WWE Podcast Network. So I'm thinking, okay, we might get this collab pod or something. But he announces that she is going to be the first member of the 2026 WWE Hall of Fame. And like I said earlier to start the show, I don't really care. It's not a physical building. It's not like the wrestling hall. It's not like the baseball Hall of Fame or the football Hall or the NFL Hall of Fame, where there's a certain criteria where you need to have to where you can get in or even be on the ballot. It's just something that started up as something made up in Vince McMahon's head. And now it's become an opportunity for TKO to make money. And just it is what it is. Next, we get into the main event. Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes, the WWE Championship. And before I get into that, guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. That's good. Good stuff. Now, this match, for me, I feel as if going into it was the least hyped out of all the other matches. They told that story. They shot that angle several weeks ago where Drew McIntyre took Cody Rhodes out. Then, Cody Rhodes went off to film Street Fighter. They kind of picked this thing back up like 2-3 weeks ago. But there wasn't a lot of juice going into it. I think the mixed tag match and Cena versus Brock had a lot more fan interest. There were a lot more people into those. But this was a solid match for the most part. The way that it ended made it abundantly clear they're going to figure out a way to run this thing back again. The next WWE PLE is going to be Clash at Perth, which I believe starts at 8 a.m. on the East Coast, which, guys, I'm pretty dedicated in giving you guys as much content as I possibly can. But asking me to wake up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday is kind of hard to ask me to do. Do what? A post show at what, 11:30 in the morning? Like, come on, guys. Give me some slack. She needs to get her up to the kid. I got a question. The ref in that match. I agree with Barrett's commentary. That's what I'm saying. When he was going for the Claymore on the LED lights, and then the ref want to get into it, it's not as bad as this example that I'm going to bring up, but it's kind of in the similar vein of when they had the Hell in a Cell match with the Fiend and Seth Rollins, where it ended in the DQ. Like, where's the logic behind that? Drew McIntyre was screwed again. He's going to be able to go with that claim on SmackDown on Friday. They're going to probably book a rematch at Perth. Very strange way to end the show. I know that I think it's pretty clear that Cody Rhodes was going to win the match, but the way that they ended it, that was a bunch of malarkey. Shout out to my up north people with the malarkey reference. She's a great character, and hold on, I remember that, I guess, but SD Jones is it. Clash in Perth is on my birthday. It's on your birthday? You're going to be celebrating with some WWE wrestling on your birthday? Do you have anything special planned on your birthday? Is it a special milestone birthday? Like what? Like 16, 18, 21, 25, 30, 35, 40, one of those? Next year I turn 30. Getting old. I remember when I was 18, and and people would tell me, "Oh, I'm 30." I think like, God, that guy's freaking old. And now look at me. Now people are probably looking at me and thinking, God, that guy is old. Funny how life works, right? Funny how life works. But this is Wrestlepalooza. It was a solid show. It for what it was, this big premiere that they had on ESPN. For the most part, this was just one of those things where it's not a milestone. It's not a 55, not as of yet. That is a milestone birthday. Double nickel? That is a milestone birthday. What do you mean? That's a big one. Congratulations on that. I'm trying to be like you. You are getting old. Yeah, I know. I know. But we're off from Wrestlepalooza. Let's kind of shift towards All Out. Very good show. I think so. Wrestlepalooza was a really solid show for the most part too. It just you can really kind of tell the differences when you have these days where you have the two companies present their shows, because WWE, and they've said it on multiple different occasions, they don't consider themselves a wrestling company. They consider themselves, storytellers, and they really kind of value. You see guys in different interviews like AJ Styles and Kevin Owens who've emphasized, at least for them, that they prioritize moments over matches, which I think, if you really look back on it, makes sense, right? When you talk about, hey, give me your favorite memories as a wrestling fan, most people say what? Like Andre getting slammed by Hogan, Austin pouring the beer off from the truck, or the Undertaker's entrance or something like that. Most people don't really mention matches for the most part. But with what AEW is doing, the hot streak that they're on now, I think that it needs to be applauded. AEW reminds me of EC. That match with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin, it was very reminiscent of that, right? Oh, now I'm not a guy who considers myself a softie. I think in certain instances, violence is necessary. Like for me, like when they do Hell in a Cell matches, I think it makes the most sense that, okay, there needs to be blood involved, because most of the time Hell in a Cell matches are reserved for like these very intense, very personal feuds. So when AEW has violence, it doesn't necessarily, make me squeamish. But what does make me squeamish is those moments where we see, Jon Moxley getting stabbed in the head by a fork. I think that's a little bit barbaric. I think in that that match that we saw earlier in the night too, with MJF and Mark Briscoe, the tax match, especially that moment where we saw Mark Briscoe getting the tax, stuffed in his mouth. Oh, that's got to be brutal. Gotta be brutal. But this was a show that not only had some surprise moments, like some title changes that we talked about earlier, Chris Statlander becoming the new women's champion, but we saw some returns, and we saw a debut, which we're going to talk about in a second here when we talk about the opening match. After a little while, but let's kick this off. We get the reunion. Cope, Christian. This is their first tag team match together, I think they said since 2011, I believe. And this is their first match as a tag team in Canada in over 20 years. They open up the show with them roaming through the hallways. And they're in Toronto. And they are greeted by the pride of Canada, Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys. If you guys are not aware, the Trailer Park Boys were, I know, I don't originally know where it was shot on, but I know my first exposure to the Trailer Park Boys was off of Netflix. We see Bubbles there, the green bastard. Beth Phoenix is back. Love it. We're going to get into that. Big time surprise. The angle that they shot after that match, if you guys remember, they shot the exact same angle. I think it was either 2019 or 2021, where they had the Judgment Day take out Beth Phoenix. So very kind of copy and paste in that aspect. Did a little bit of a twist to it where we didn't have Rhea Ripley do it this time. We had FTR take her out. But I thought this was a very solid match. FTR, I think that if we're talking about the best tag teams of the last decade, the Bucks, FTR, the Usos, New Day, they're kind of all in that conversation. Whoever you think is the best, I believe that that's your own personal preference. But I think that it's pretty undeniable that those are at least the four guys who are in that conversation, at least in my mind, right? If you have somebody else who's on your mind, you can throw them in as well. but those are kind of the Mount Rushmore of tag teams, at least in the last 10 to 15 years to me. A Cope, a Christian. I like the dynamic that they're continuing to play on with these two guys, where they didn't necessarily turn both of them, whether it's turn Christian Christian baby face to match Cope being a face, or turn Cope heel to match Christian being a heel. They're letting them play out their own individual roles, where Cope is still the baby face and Christian is still the heel. Very reminiscent to Sting and Lex Luger in WCW, where, if you guys remember, Sting was always, the forever babyface, and Lex was, the heel in that grouping. But this was really good. Cope, Christian, they were able to pick up the W. But throughout the match, you see Cope being kind of, having Stokely there being a distraction, getting in between the match. And we see some music hit. Unfamiliar music. We're not really sure who this is. We don't see a graphic. We just see flames. And it gets to the point where we see Beth come across the stream. We know exactly who that is. This is Mrs. Copeland, Beth Phoenix. I believe that they called her Beth Copeland, so I don't believe that she's going to be able to go under the Beth Phoenix name. I don't believe that she's going to be able to go under that name. I think it's probably WWE owned name. So she was able to carry Stokely off, and FTR, it looked as if they were going to pick up the W. They hit the Shatter Machine multiple times on Cope. They took Christian out on the outside, but Dax was in the moment where, always a Luger fan, sad to see him in a wheelchair now. I don't know if you saw a video a couple weeks ago. I believe it was on DDP's YouTube channel, or I don't remember if it was on DDP's YouTube channel or if it was just on social media, but Lex was walking around his kitchen unassisted. So what DDP is able to do for all these people, all these different people who just, have been such success stories under DDP. Jake the Snake Roberts, Scott Hall, R.I.P. Lex Luger now. Devon Dudley, he said that he lost over 60 pounds doing DDP yoga. The guy is a miracle worker. He should be inducted in the Hall of Fame again, just for all of the work that he's been able to be doing. But Cope, Christian were able to pick up the W. Beth Phoenix came back to celebrate with her husband and Christian. And right as if they were celebrating their debut, we see Nick Wayne being carried out by his mother on a wheelchair. Then we see Kip Sabian handcuffed Cope's hand to one of the ring ropes. Christian is just pile drivered multiple different times. Christian is, taken out. Cope is in the corner. He is helpless. Beth Phoenix is trying to help him get out of the handcuffs. And we see Cope tell her, just go, just go, just go. She doesn't listen. She gives Cope a kiss. She tries to fight off FTR, and they hit her with a pile driver. And Beth Phoenix is laid out. Her husband, Adam Copeland, is sitting there helpless. This is going to continue the storyline between Cope and Christian and FTR. So we're probably going to get another tag team match with them, but probably with a more of a hardcore stipulation, or maybe have a woman be involved where they can make this kind of a 6-person tag match. The old guys, the old guys got the beats. The old guys didn't get beat up. So poor Cope, poor Christian, they won the battle, but it looks like as if right now they lost the war. Second match, Big Bill, as I like to call him, Large William, going up against a returning Eddie Kingston. Now, Eddie Kingston, I think that, prior to CM Punk's WWE run, I thought that, CM Punk is this rebel. He's this guy who speaks for the little person. He's this guy who's so authentic and so real. He was, it was one of the reasons why I was such a big fan. And after what we've seen in WWE, where, hey, I don't think this is terrible, but I think we just got to be honest. He sold out, right? I think Eddie Kingston is who we thought CM Punk was for the most part. And for him to come back, very excited. I think that there's multiple different built-in stories that we could have with Eddie Kingston that would make compelling television. I think him in a feud with MJF works out perfectly natural. I think that the storylines that be told between those two characters are kind of just right there and it's ready-made. I think feuds with him and Samoa Joe, him and Don Callis, him involved against the Don Callis family. I think that's good stuff too. There's plenty of different opportunities we can have with Eddie Kingston. Now this match, nobody is gonna confuse it with Omega against Gabe Kidd at the Tokyo Dome, but it was solid. I think that Eddie Kingston ended up botching his finish. I think that he went to go hit the spinning back flip, but he completely missed. Sorry for saying the F word. He completely missed, but he picked up the win. After the match, Keith, the bounty hunter, and Big Bill, they started beating up on Eddie Kingston, and we saw the arena go dark, and then we see the Hook signal flash in the sky. Hook comes out to zero pop, which is unfortunate because I'm a Hook guy, but we got to be real, right? The guy came out to zero pop. Nobody gave a damn about Hook. And he ended up giving the assist to Eddie Kingston. And you saw two New York guys standing tall. And he was great today. He's going to be hanging with Hook. I was at Hook's very first match in AEW. He was over like Rover that night. But Eddie and Hook, they could do worse with Hook, right? They could do worse with Eddie. So excited to see how this is going to work out. Next, we get into the third match. MJF, Mark Briscoe, or I like to call him Marcus Briscoe, in a tax and tables match. If you are somebody who loves violence, if you are somebody who loves blood, if you are somebody who enjoys seeing people in absolute pain, this was heaven for you because this was pretty freaking violent. And when MJF came out in all white, I knew that we were going to see a bloody freaking mess. And that's exactly what we got. There's so many times throughout this match, where you saw back body drops on top of the tax, or Alabama slams on the tax, or people, getting their faces grinding into the tax, which we saw MJF do to Mark Briscoe, where I just kind of closed my eyes, turned away. But this is kind of what makes AEW what AEW is, right? They're not afraid to get violent. They're not afraid to be, in your face and intense with it. They have always claimed to be the counter brand. And I think this was on display. One thing that I kind of thought was funny is we saw an interview earlier, I believe it was on the media call for All In, where Tony Khan was discussing, price tickets, right? The amount that costs for a ticket, because that's something that's very much so a discussion these days when it comes to the wrestling events because of how high the tickets are to see a WWE show. And Tony Khan, he came out, he said a statement basically saying, it's kind of our thing. We kind of always try to go out of our way to make our tickets affordable for families, which, hey, I think that's an honorable approach, but I don't know who is taking their family to see a man get his face, grinded into thumbtacks, right? It's like, yeah, we're trying to make our shows, affordable for family, yet we're seeing we're showing on our show a guy being mutilated in the middle of the ring. I don't know. I don't know if the two things kind of, mesh. Yeah, bring your family. It's affordable, but you're going to see some shit that's going to traumatize little Jimmy. But, the moment that really was kind of like, was when MJF shoved those thumbtacks into Mark Briscoe's mouth. Mark Briscoe took a lot of abuse in this match, but MJF, he took some abuse as well. It was more so, if I had to break it down, it was probably more 70-30 when it came to who was taking the abuse on the attacks, and 70 going towards Mark Briscoe, and MJF getting the other 30. And the way that the match played out with Mark Briscoe picking up the win, hitting the J Driller, I think that was some good storytelling. That was some good storytelling because of how that played out, to where you got Mark Briscoe, the obvious babyface, who is working from underneath, who's been losing to MJF all these other times, and he was able to pick up the win and really kind of put a bow on this. You went to Greensboro to see Sting with your family. Yes, we were also grown men. I was like 20 at that point. What? That was like 2 years ago. I was like 27. And what? If I was 27, my brother was 20, and you were a 50-year-old man. Yeah. Family friendly. We were all grown ass men that night. That was a crazy show, right? Seeing Darby Allin go through that plane of glass. Woof, that was some violent stuff. Next, we get into the GOAT, the CEO, against Riho, the very first AEW's Women's Champion, here for the TBS Championship. I don't think anybody went into this match expecting Riho to win. I think if you were, you ended up leaving this show disappointed, but I think this was a really solid match, really solid between these two. I think that Mercedes is, at the very least, going to put on a quality match. I don't think that she's had a bad match since she's gone to AEW. I think if we're all going to be completely honest with each other, the best match of her career is still, to this date, her match with Bayley from NXT TakeOver in Brooklyn. But I don't think that she's put any clunkers up in and since she's been in AEW. I know there's going to be some people who are going to disagree with me probably, but I think especially in the last several matches that she's had, they have been solid to very good. Mainly, I think that her match with Toni Storm at All In was very good. I think that the match she had with Statlander was very good as well. I think that this match with Riho was very solid. My whole thing is she's kind of running out of opponents at this stage. She could run it back with Athena. I think that'd be solid. Going to run it back with Toni Storm again. I think that we could do that as well, but we're kind of running out of people that are viable opponents for Mercedes. We're going to have to sign some fresh blood. Now, there's other individuals who are on the come up who I think could be that next individual. Tekla, who we saw later on in the show. Queen Emanata, who for me, next up, I'm starting to become a big fan of her as well, but there's nobody that's very clear and cut to who is going to be the one who's going to be able to dethrone Mercedes at this moment. But hey, who knows? Next, we get into a triple threat for the Undisputed Championship. Okada, Takeshita, Masquerade Dorado. Masquerade Dorado. MVP of the match. I know most people going into this match were probably kind of hoping that we were going to see pretty much a singles match with Takeshita and Okada, which I feel like is coming down the pipeline very soon rather than later. I think this is the big money feud that everybody is waiting on, and Shida is next. I think she already beat Shida. She's beaten so many people that we're forgetting. But Masquerade Dorado, he was able to hold his own against these two guys. We're getting this story being told of kind of like, these are two guys, Takeshita and Okada, who are kind of fighting to be, the dominant one in the Don Callis family. Okada, the undisputed champion, is it undisputed or unified? Pretty much means the same thing, right? Takeshita, who is our G1 winner this year, guys had a hell of a year. Takeshita is that guy. I remember seeing Takeshita go up against Will Ospreay at Revolution last year, and guy was phenomenal. I know that Will Ospreay probably is going to get the most credit from that match, but it takes two to tango. And Takeshita, ever since he's joined with AEW, his match with Danielson, I believe, was really good as well. This guy is up next. I think that just like how we talk about it in WWE with EO and English not being her first language, I don't think that the fact that English is his first not his first language, I don't think it matters. I think the guy looks like a star, walks like a star, dresses like a star, wrestles very good. I think that sooner rather than later, it's going to be time to pull the trigger on this guy. And whether it's him being the guy who's going to be to dethrone Okada and take home his championship, or it's going to be him eventually taking home the AEW World Championship, I think it's very much so in the future that Takeshita is going to be in that upper echelon of main eventers, especially now with Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland gone. We need somebody. Whether it's somebody from the women's division or the men's division, to take up that mantle, or maybe it's going to be more of not so just one individual, but it's going to be a collective of people who are going to be able to fill in the shoes of Ospreay and Swerve. But Takeshita is my guy, who's the prime example of who is going to be somebody who I think if you give him the ball, he's going to be able to deliver you a touchdown. We get into the coffin match. Mox, Darby Allin. Darby Allin, fresh off of him climbing Mount Everest. Those three put on a great match after Okada for Hangman. Darby and Mox. We've been telling this story. Darby has kind of been on the front lines of AEW to go up against Jon Moxley, him and another man who is going to be making a big return on this Wednesday after it was teased. But Darby and Mox. This was, again, a violent match. A lot of blood. If that's your thing, you were in heaven. You were a pig in shit watching this match. Bryan Danielson, the story that we're being told on Wednesday, if you guys didn't catch it, but we saw a sit-down interview between Danielson and Darby where Darby had Danielson promise him that he's not going to get involved. We saw Danielson whisper something into Darby Allin's ear, which we still don't know what it was. It wasn't revealed. And this is violent. We got the other Death Riders involved into this match. Darby apparently has no friends backstage. Got no help. Bryan Danielson was sitting there helpless because he gave Darby his word. Mox told the other Death Riders to leave. Then eventually we got it to where Darby looked as if he was going to win because he was able to, put the, what would you call it, plastic bag over Jon Moxley's head, the same way that we saw Jon Moxley do to Bryan Danielson and other people in the past. We saw Jon Moxley have the bag over his head where he was choked out. It looked as if Darby was going to pick up the W, but we got a returning Pac, a freshly haircutted Pac, make his return. That rat bastard. And he was able to assist Jon Moxley in picking up the W. And then they carried out, he stuffed Darby Allin. They stuffed Darby Allin in a body bag. They stuffed him into the coffin. They closed the lid. And they took him away as if, he was a sack of potatoes. And for a second, I thought Darby Allin was murdered. The same way that Gabe Kidd was a couple of weeks ago, because we have yet to see Gabe Kidd back after he was stuffed in that body bag and driven away from the truck. Whatever happened to him? Has somebody checked in with his parents or his missus or his friends? we still have to put an APB out for Gabe Kidd because we have no idea where he's at. So does the DMD show up? Those three put on a great match in the Pat. I mean, the show's in Pittsburgh, right? The show is in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is Britsburg. So maybe. We get into the four-way for the women's championship. Toni Storm, Tekla, Stat, Jamie Hayter. Four of the tippy top of the women's division in AEW. Excuse me. Tekla, she has been a Grand Slam home run signing for AEW since she has made her debut. Toni Storm, most interesting character in all of professional wrestling. Statlander is Statlander. Jamie Hayter is Jamie Hayter. This is an interesting match. I think going into it, nobody expected a title change, but this is exactly what we got. We saw Chris Statlander use the seatbelt, which she's been using for the last couple of weeks, on Toni Storm to pick up the win. This is interesting because at least, if we're going to do it with the storyline, okay, we could do, if she was ever to pick up the win on Tekla or Jamie Hayter, we could use, I was not pinned in the match and I lost my title, which would automatically, kind of put me in a position for a rematch. But her pinning Toni Storm, not only in my mind does it kind of say that this is probably something that Toni Storm suggested, just based off of the type of interviews that she's given and the vibe that she gives off, that she's kind of a very unselfish performer. But I think that this was a great way to kind of put the explanation point on this sentence of having her pin Toni. Those ladies put on a show. Tekla is amazing. Tekla is great. Big fan of the Spider Lady. Very big fan. God, it's getting late. Whew, it's getting late. Let's kind of speed through these last two matches because I got to give me some sleep. We get into a four-way for the tag team championship in a ladder match. Once you knew that the ladders was going to be broken out, you knew that there was going to be bodies everywhere. Guys like Jet Speed, who are known for the flippy flappies, they were on full display tonight. Jet Speed, I think that they have been a Grand Slam home run signing for AEW as well. Brodito, I think that they have been one of the better examples of these Frankenstein tag teams that kind of get put together. I like the fact that they have the one small guy with the one big guy. Brodito has the speed. Brody King has the power. The Bucks, said it earlier, they are on the Mount Rushmore of better tag teams of the past decade. They got their pyro. Ever since they won the $500,000, they've been able to buy back a little bit of the respect that they lost after what went down at All In in Texas. I think that things were a little bit of a toss-up as to who was going to win this due to the stipulation. But we see Brodito retain. Brodito, they hottest tag team in all of AEW. Bandito, he has a case for being Wrestler of the Year based off of what he's done in ROH and him being a part of Brodito as well. The guy has a good case to that. So I think at the end of the year, he's going to be at least in the mentions for that. But, who knows? Still a couple of more months. There's some time. After the match, the Bucks, they were in the ring, and they were confronted by a returning Jack Perry. Jack, who we have not seen in months. And it's so funny, if you guys were somebody who was watching both, All Out and Wrestlepalooza, and you happen to have the Wrestlepalooza pre-show going on, the exact moment that Jack Perry showed up was the exact moment that CM Punk and AJ Lee were walking into the building. So it's kind of funny how the timing worked out and the way that was going on. And another thing, if you guys put attention, during Punk's match, he kind of made a choking gesture. He makes a choking gesture the night that Jack Perry returns. Also, a very funny coincidence of timing between those two events. But hey, Jack Perry makes his return. If you guys remember the last we saw Jack Perry, he was aligned with the Bucks. We didn't see that. He jumped on the Bucks, and the Bucks were about to set him up for a Bucks trigger, and the arena goes black. We see a screen. We see Jack Perry, kind of like in a desert or a graveyard, digging up a grave. We show back to like him looking as if he's like in a doctor's office of some sort, and we see Luchasaurus being revived. You guys remember when we saw Luchasaurus's return several weeks ago? He was kind of set up in that office, that doctor's office, but we didn't see who was the one who helped revive him. And he appeared in the ring. He choke slammed the Bucks. He had the kill switch belt around his waist. He took that kill switch, belt off, threw it into the stands. They hugged, and they go back to their old Jurassic Express theme song. And it looks as if we got a babyface Jack Perry and a babyface Luchasaurus. They're going to go back to being the Jurassic Express. Poor Marco Stunt was probably watching the show, throwing his socks at the TV. But for me, man, Jack Perry, he works better as a face. He has that baby face thing about him, literally. So for me, it's kind of hard to like take him seriously as a heel. I give the guy his respect for trying, and there was moments in time, especially with the scapegoat character after what went down with him and Punk, where I feel like he was riding the momentum. But I think he works better as a baby face, and I think that this adds a new tag team back into the mix of the tag team division. Because if you guys remember the beginning of AEW, the tag team division they had was pretty strong. I think right now it's kind of and you add Jurassic Express back into that mix. I think that's a good addition. Would rather watch him as Evil Jack. The kids were happy, and that's important, right? The kids were happy. Next, we get into the main event. Hangman Adam Page versus Kyle Fletcher. Now, this match was going head-to-head with John Cena and Brock Lesnar. One match, you kind of feel like, what the hell was that? The other match, high-quality graps. And that's what we got. Kyle Fletcher, even though he wasn't the guy who picked up the win, I think that they made him look as strong as they possibly could. And taking a loss, he looked like a machine in there. Where the point where they got to the match where Hangman gave him everything that he had, and he was just blowing gas at that moment. I think that Kyle is the guy who, within the next couple of years, he's going to be the building block that AEW is going to surround the rest of the roster around him. I think that this was a great showing for him being in a position to main event a pay-per-view for the world title. I think Kyle is on the up and up. I think there's no shame in losing this match. I think that we're going to see him in many more AEW world title matches throughout the next couple of years. So may not have been his time tonight, but his time is coming up very, very shortly. And I think that he could keep his head up high with the performance that he gave tonight. But guys, hit that like button before we get out of here. It is a long night. I got a whole bunch of shorts that I need to record, so I think I'm going to call it a night right now. We usually do post shows on Mondays, but like I said, I'm going to be at Raw on Monday, so there will be no post show this week for Raw, but we'll have a post show on Wednesday for Dynamite, which should be an exciting episode. It was hinted at we are getting a return of Orange Cassidy on Wednesday. There's a possible return of Britt Baker with the show being in Pittsburgh. We're going to see what story that they're going to tell with Beth Phoenix now being into the fold. This is going to be some good stuff, and looking forward to Wednesday and seeing how they're going to be. And I look forward to being at Raw on Monday. But guys, I'm going to call it a night. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't. But I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.